A shard of trust broke the moment you whispered your truth, and the room fell silent. You felt eyes sharpen on you like blades, the air folding in on your heartbeat. That stifling hush wasn't sympathy. It was judgment, a silent verdict that said you'd erred. In that instant, you understood. Power doesn't reside in explanations or apologies. It lives in the void you create when you refuse to justify yourself. You've stood at the edge of disappointment countless times, friends who vanished when your loyalty demanded a price, lovers who criticized your boundaries, colleagues who smiled while carving your reputation. Every excuse you offered only fed their appetite for control. They didn't care about your reasons. They cared that you cared. And in caring, you surrendered a weapon more lethal than any argument: your detachment. Watch how respect fractures when you clasp your own value in words. If you must proclaim your worth, it's already gone. They wait for the tremor in your voice, the plea for acceptance, the apology for being human. But silence shatters their confidence. They begin to question their own certainty. When you stopped defending yourself, they started doubting themselves. Imagine standing in a room where every accusation lands like a hammer, and instead of flinching, you remain motionless, unyielding. They call you cold because they can't predict your next move. They fear the calm before your storm. And that fear gives you dominion, not over them, but over yourself. You become unshakable, an unmapped territory they can't navigate. You're no longer a target, you're an enigma. Lean into that quiet. Let the abyss of your silence speak volumes louder than any apology could. Each moment you resist explaining, you bolster your presence with steel. Each refusal to apologize hardens your aura with magnetic force. People will lean closer, not out of compassion, but out of necessity to decode the silence that protects you. If you're tired of being consumed by the weight of their opinions, subscribe and stand among those who've chosen the path of ruthless clarity. Comment your last moment of silence and feel the power in words unsaid. Your heart tightened when they first tested your limits. It was a comment tossed like a stone, small enough to dismiss, but sharp enough to draw blood. You let it sit in the silence. You felt the sting. Then you watched as they waited, eyes searching for a reaction, a crack in the armor. You offered none. In that absence of yield, you reclaimed every inch of yourself. They recoiled, unprepared for a predator with no roar, only a stillness that whispered, "Strike and you die by your own blade." They try to bait you with compassion, pretending to hold a mirror to your flaws. They lean forward, voice soft, words coated in honey. But beneath it lurks a trap. You recognize the shape of manipulation, the promise of understanding masking a demand for submission. So you nod once, almost imperceptibly, and fold your hands. Your face remains blank. In that weighted quiet, you see them reconsider their pursuit. The veneer of warmth dissolves when it meets a wall that refuses to warm itself. There is a massacre of excuses in your past. You remember the nights you replayed apologies in your mind like broken records, hoping one perfect utterance would rewrite history. None did. They clipped your words, analyzed the tremble in your tone, and catalogued your fear. You swallowed them all tonight. No more rehearsals. No more pleas. Instead, you breathe evenly, chest rising like the tide before the storm. Every inhale feeds your resolve. Every exhale sends their doubts swirling toward oblivion. Power isn't birthed in victory, you know that from bitter experience. It festers in the aftermath of your restraint. The moment you refuse to play their game, they lose the board. Your absence of reaction becomes a weapon they can't disarm. Watch them scramble, adopt new tactics, guilt, urgency, sorrowful faces. You study their flaws, catalog their desperation. You learn their patterns faster than they can weave new ones. And when they falter, You remain unmoved, an unspoken testament to detached dominion. In that space between words, in the calm of your unbroken gaze, lies true authority. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to justify your existence. You exist beyond debate. They may call it arrogance. You call it self-possession. They may label you frozen. You know you're free. Free from needing permission. Free from seeking pardon. They can't breach the silence that cradles your will. They can't soften the edges of your presence. You are the still point in a world desperate to shift you. They whisper behind your back, waiting for you to crack. Their gossip is a chorus of half-truths, each lie sharpened to a point they hope will pierce your composure. You feel the distant hum of their voices, a low-frequency vibration beneath your ribs. Instead of shattering, you let it pass through you, like wind through a hollow reed. Your silence magnifies their uncertainty, turning their words against them. They begin to question their own rumors. If you don't react, were their whispers ever real? Remember the taste of that first betrayal, bitter on your tongue, when a trusted ally traded your confidence for convenience. You replayed that moment over and over, as if seeking a clue to your own downfall. Tonight you lay it to rest. You acknowledge the wound, but you do not dwell on its echoes. You shift the battle inward. The only validation that matters is the one you deny yourself. In that denial, you forge a self-reliance so unbreakable that no external blade can cut you again. Power demands economy. Every word squandered is blood spilled. You guard your speech like a fortress, admitting only essentials. You answer questions with precision or not at all. When they press you for clarity, you straighten your spine and wait. The pause becomes a weight they can't bear. Their impatience betrays them. They fill the void with more noise. But noise is powerless against a mind disciplined in silence. There was a time when you believed kindness would earn you safety. You opened doors, extended hands, offered explanations like keys. But the doors slammed shut. The hands turned to claws. The keys rusted in cold locks you never asked to open. Now you open only the doors you choose. And when you step through, you leave the frame empty, no trace of your passage. They search for footprints, but find only the void you left behind. Watch how they recalibrate when you refuse their version of reality. You speak your truth not in revelations, but in the solidity of your presence. They test you, ask for your side, plead for your forgiveness. You hold their gaze and let time stretch. In that elongation, their resolve crumbles. They realize the battlefield has shifted. They're fighting the silence you command. They grow restless, then fearful, then cautious. They tiptoe around you, afraid to strike the next blow. You wield boundaries without announcement. They manifest like unbreachable walls. You don't herald their construction. You don't parade your strength. You simply stand, limbs relaxed, eyes steady. They learn the hard way that the only way through is around, and some walls have no corners. They circumnavigate your edges until they run out of maps. Your detachment becomes a mirror they can't shatter. In the aftermath of their attacks, you survey the wreckage of expectations. Their assumptions lie strewn like shattered glass. You don't collect the fragments. You leave them where they fell. You don't rebuild what they tried to destroy. Instead, you step over the ruins, each stride affirming your autonomy. They watch from the sidelines, silent and defeated, as you shape new ground beneath your feet. There is no redemption in apologies. There is no truth in explanations. Power isn't negotiated, it's realized. When you refuse to shrink, they contract. When you refuse to explain, they expand their doubts. When you refuse to soften, they blunt their own edges. And within that dynamic, you become the axis of their uncertainty and the master of your own domain. Feel the shift in the air when they sense they can't touch you. That shift is a resonance of your unspoken authority. It hums in every unsent message, every closed door, every word you swallowed. It reverberates through their attempts to draw blood, reminding them they play in your territory now and in your territory. Silence is the deadliest weapon. In the hollow moments after their retreat, you feel the hum of power settling like mercury in your veins. You didn't shout victory, you whispered absence. That absence becomes a force field, repelling their most feral impulses. They circle you, each orbit tighter than the last, desperate to breach your perimeter. But you've already rewritten the rules. They breathe your air but cannot own your mind. They try to brand your silence as indifference, equating your stillness with empty emotion. They mistake absence for weakness. But you know that restraint is rigor in motion. You permit nothing to stir beneath your surface. Not anger, not fear, not longing. Your emotions lie dormant like coiled steel. Let them rage at the sight of a closed mouth. Let them regurgitate their theories. Their cacophony only underscores your control. Recall the taste of every shattered expectation you ever held. The promotions withheld. The promises broken. The laughter that cut deeper than knives. Each betrayal etched a scar, a silent ledger of debts owed. But you don't linger on balances. You internalize the ledger, becoming both creditor and executor. You demand repayment in the currency of silence, and your creditors can never meet your price. They prod you with their narrative. You were wronged. You deserve an explanation. But you deliver none. Explanations are public records of your wounds. You burn them in private, leaving no evidence. Each time they circle back, you receive them with the same empty gaze. No flicker of guilt, no trace of regret. They recoil from the vacancy, uncertain how to wage war against a void. They escalate messages at dawn, calls at midnight, orchestrated ambushes of emotional appeals. But your inbox remains unread. Your phone lies face down, a dead weight. They believe technology binds you to them. Instead, you wield it as a leash, yanked tight until they surrender to doubt. Technology amplifies their desperation, not your availability. The harder they push, the more you recede. In that digital desert, they encounter echoes of themselves. Why won't you talk? They write again. And you might reply with a single character, or with none. Each omission is a declaration. You are not compelled by their fear. You are unbound. And that unbound status fractures their illusion of control. You do not seek to destroy them. Destruction is wasteful. You seek to reclaim your sovereignty. And every unanswered plea, every moment of ignored provocation, is a reclamation act. You don't dance on ashes. You step around them, forging new pathways through the rubble of expectation. Power, you realize, is a mirror they cannot hold up to you. They need reflection, feedback, confession. You offer only absence and observation. In your gaze, they glimpse their own vulnerability and recoil. They shorten their sentences, soften their posture, abandon their demands. They adapt to your boundaries, shrinking into spaces you designate. Soon, they learn the cost of approaching you uninvited. They learn to approach you on your terms, if at all. And in that concession lies your unspoken triumph. You stand apart, not by claiming territory, but by dissolving it. The battlefield becomes a ghost town where only you can tread. This is the crucible of your metamorphosis. The world assumes they can crush you with words. You prove they can't even move you with silence. And in that stillness, you ascend beyond their reach, untouchable, unreadable, inevitably magnetic. You feel the tremor in their approach before you sense their words, a hesitation in the footstep, the catch in the phrase. the stutter in the plea. They advance with caution now, as though navigating minefields. Every syllable they utter must clear your invisible perimeter, or it detonates harmlessly against your reserve. In their caution lies your supremacy. They believe vulnerability is a currency you spent long ago. They imagine you bleeding behind that composed facade. But wounds that refuse to scab become scars of steel. You no longer feel the cut, you feel the resolution. You've catalogued every tactic they employ: pity, outrage, nostalgia, and countered each with the same weapon: absence. Your non-reaction is a guillotine they see but cannot avoid. Remember the first time you offered your truth, and it was twisted into an indictment. You watched your words repurposed as chains to bind you. Tonight, you repurpose the silence itself as armor. You speak only when the moment demands its weight, and when you speak, the single sentence you release carries the force of 1,000 apologies withheld. They lean in, mesmerized, absorbing every nuance. They test your mettle with insults, naming you heartless or prideful. Let them. Those labels are rife with vulnerability for them. They crave narrative hooks. They anchor their world in stories they can tell. You exist outside their scripts. They try to retell your history, but your silence rewrites the plot. They fill the gaps with their assumptions, and assumptions unravel. When they ask, "Do you care?" you don't answer. They see the pause and imagine abyss. They hear the echo of their own longing. They fear that if you cared, you would speak. And in that fear resides their ultimate concession. They'd rather leave you in mystery than provoke you into explanation. You learned early that the world trades in reactions. A sob, a gasp, a smile, each is currency in the market of control. You refused to transact. Silence became your stockpile. Its value compounds with every unsent message, every unspoken defense. Insider traders, your betrayers lurk at the edges hoping for a signal. But your ledger remains closed, and their accounts go barren. There is a thrill in withholding your presence when they expect it most. When the hour is darkest, when apology seems imminent, you remain a phantom. You feel their panic through static lines and unanswered calls. You sense the tremble in their confession before it passes through the wire, and you resist the pull to respond. Because every response is a concession, every word a bridge that invites them back in. See how they fracture under the weight of your restraint. Their confidence splinters. Their resolve crumples. They send you fragments, notes half-finished, questions trailing off. They perform vulnerability like a ritual, hoping to coax you into performance. But you sit still, a statue carved from resolve. They circle you, doubt-stricken vultures, peering for cracks that never form. In that circuit, you study their fear. You reclaim the shards of your past they taught you to apologize, to explain, to perform. You repackaged their lessons, refining them into detachment. You distilled every betrayal into a covenant with yourself. Never again. You watch them, these architects of your pain, reduced to architects of your wonder. They cannot fathom how you remain unmarked and unbowed. Their next move is always the same: a flood of memories, a plea for context, an offer of reconciliation. It's mechanical, predictable. You see the pattern: allegation, reaction, resolution. You sever the cycle by denying the reaction. Without your participation, the sequence collapses. They stand in a void of their own making, voices echoing back at them unanswered. Power is not destruction, it's the absence of need. They crave conclusion, you crave nothing. They demand closure, you construct none. In that act, you become an enigma of strength. They suspect they've beaten you, until they realize the game never started. You never played their way. And there lies your triumph. You create a reality they cannot enter. Feel the quiet surge within you, a current of sovereignty that hums beneath every silence. It's the pulse of your unshakable core. Let it guide you when they circle again. Let it steady your breath when the storm of their demands crashes against your stillness. Let it remind you that the void you guard is not emptiness, it's potential. They will call you distant, accuse you of cruelty, beg for explanations in the name of love or friendship, but you offer them only the void you inhabit. You embody absence as presence, silence as statement, and in that paradox, you become unforgettable. They circle back one last time, voices soft as silk but edged with desperation. Just tell me why. The question hangs, a spider's web spun to trap you. You don't move, you don't blink, you don't fill the space. The question collapses into itself, revealing its true form, demand thinly veiled as curiosity. In the echo of its collapse, you claim dominion. Watch them dismantle their own argument word by word, searching for a foothold in the unyielding wall you've erected. They offer concessions. I'll never ask again. I promise this is the last time. Their pleas slice through the air, but they encounter no breach. Their concessions are the sound of hollow doors swinging open to empty rooms. They enter alone, confronted by the void you guard. Once, you gave them the map to your heart. They studied it, drew routes, then demolished the landmarks. Tonight, you offer no map. You exist outside cartography. They panic at the thought of a heart without coordinates. They beg you for markers, landmarks to navigate your silence. You refuse. In that refusal, they are lost. There is a power in being unknowable. They want a biography. You give them a silhouette. They want testimony. You give them absence. They want confession. You remain mute. Each demand for your inner life becomes a nail hammered into their own coffin of uncertainty. Their insistence proves your mastery. They need you to explain because they cannot control what remains unspoken. Feel the momentum of their retreat, their footsteps growing distant as they realize no answer awaits them. They turn to each other, baffled, seeking solace in shared confusion. Their solidarity crumbles. The very unity fostered by gossip fractures when nothing unites them against you. There is no story, no scandal, no confession to circulate. There is only your silence. In that silence, you are free. Free from the tyranny of interpretation. Free from the burden of justification. Free from the illusion that you owe your emotional state to anyone. You carried their expectations long enough. Now you carry only yourself, and you need no one to bear witness. They will reconstruct their narrative, of course. They will gossip about your stoicism, label it as arrogance, malign it as indifference. Let them. In their reconstruction, they reveal more about their hunger for control than any truth about you. They fracture themselves upon the rock of your restraint. Power is the art of absence, the deliberate omission that renders every alternative meaningless. You don't fill gaps, you deepen them. You don't answer questions. You transform them into echoes of their own doubt. You don't expose your wounds. You let them fester unseen until they harden into armor. Recall the nights you replayed every misstep, every apology unsent, every word left unspoken. Tonight, you transform that echo chamber into a sanctuary. You replace regret with resolve, fear with forbearance. You harness the inertia of your silence as propulsion into a realm they cannot breach. They may call you cruel. They may call you lost. They may call you unfeeling. Each label just another scrap in the furnace of their agitation, scraps they burn trying to elicit a reaction. But you stand apart, unignited. In the crucible of their expectations, your absence of reaction becomes proof against combustion. Feel the current of authority that hums beneath your calm. It's a low-frequency vibration that unsettles them without a word. It's the quiet certainty that needs no affirmation. It's the stillness that precedes every storm you choose not to unleash. They will test you again, perhaps in subtler ways, slight provocations, feigned injuries, misplaced crises. When they do, you'll meet each with the same impenetrable calm. You'll let their desperation echo in the void you maintain. Each echo will remind them of their place at the perimeter of your sovereignty. And here, in the hush of your self-possession, you become a legend in their minds, a story without an ending, an equation without a solution. You become magnetic not because you draw them in, but because you repel every attempt to define you. In the void you leave behind, they search for meaning and find only themselves. They circle the emptiness, convinced they'll force an echo, a sign, a crack. But your absence is more profound than any presence they've known. It is a statement without words, an ultimatum without conditions. In that silence, you've surrendered nothing and claimed everything. Power does not require your testimony. It needs only your restraint. Every time you refuse their bait, you deepen the chasm between their world and yours. They beg for context. You grant them none. They plead for mercy. You offer only totality. In their unraveling, you witness your own reconstruction, a being unbound by demands, unmoored from guilt, unbowed by expectation. Remember, vulnerability is not giving in. It is choosing when to break. You have chosen not to break at all. You have chosen to become a fortress, not through walls, but through the empty spaces you command. Let them hammer without effect. Let them shout into the echo chamber of their own making. Their desperation only confirms your dominion. This is the final truth. Once you learn to wield silence as a blade, you never belong to anyone's narrative again. You stand apart, infinite and uncharted. They will speak of you in whispers and rumors, but their words will carry no weight. Your legacy will be the void you carved a monument to unshakable will. If this resonates with the steel in your spirit, subscribe and declare your silence below.